Hi everyone, First Partner Jennifer Siebel-Newsome here. I'm so excited to be with all of you for this very special celebration of the suffrage centennial and a sneak peek of the extraordinary women's exhibit right behind me that I've been working on with the California Museum for the past year and a half. Now, ironically, just as the Spanish flu nearly derailed the passing of women's suffrage back in 1918, the centennial celebrations that were planned across the country have had to shift just a bit due to COVID-19. I would have loved to have had you here with me in person. Yet, just like we showed back in 1918, nothing, not even a pandemic, can get in the way of a determined group of women. And that's why celebrations, milestones, and exhibits like this to tell our stories, to commemorate our progress, and to champion the work that remains are so important. The suffragists of over a century ago knew that women having political power would lead to better outcomes for our entire society. And now, today, 100 years later, the proof is everywhere. Across the globe, research shows that when you empower women with equal access to education, economic opportunities, and decision-making, whole families and communities are lifted up. Across businesses, countless studies have shown that the more women you have in leadership, the greater the creativity, the productivity, and the better the bottom line. And in government, the evidence points to the fact that women legislators sponsor more bills, pass more laws, send more money to their districts, and are more likely to introduce legislation that specifically helps women and children. That's right, women really get stuff done. Yet, despite the fact that the proof is everywhere, far too often the voices and stories of the women who make our society what it is today are not visible. They're left off the pages of our history books, they're made less visible on our television screens, they're scarcely seen in our monuments or street signs, and yes, in our museums too. So we're here today to correct that, and I can't wait for all of you to come see it in person too. Now, behind me, you see the new entrance to the updated exhibit, Women Inspire, California Women Changing Our World. And it's been my honor to work closely with the museum to bring this vision to life. And I could not be prouder of what stands behind me here today. The goal of this exhibit is to highlight extraordinary women, the women who made California, and the women who changed our country and the world, for that matter. All for the better. It is also about inspiring the next generation to pick up the mantle and continue to lead in the time ahead. Because if you can see it, you can be it. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and we must continue to walk the path that they have laid out for us. So in this exhibit, folks from around the state and beyond can learn about our history and the diverse, brilliant, strong, creative, brave, and revolutionary women who made it all possible. Folks can also learn about the state of the movement today, from current statistics on women's representation in Congress to exploring things like gender job titles and what feminism is all about. And finally, everyone, girls and boys, women and men, can explore who inspires them and decide who they want to be in their future. Because, as my husband likes to say, leadership can be found anywhere. You don't have to be something to do something. In fact, our world is desperate for more leaders who want to make this world a better place, leaders just like you. Now, while it's been my absolute pleasure to work with the museum to update this exhibit, I want to honor what was here before, the original Remarkable Women exhibit, which was brought to life by my friend, former First Lady Maria Shriver. It was my honor to chat with her about what inspired her to create the original exhibit, the significance of the centennial, and why it's more important than ever to keep lifting up women's voices. Let's take a look at our conversation. Hi, Maria. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Jen. I'm so happy to be with you.
It's fabulous, and we are thrilled to have you here to celebrate the relaunch of the Remarkable Women exhibit here in California at the California Museum. When you first launched the exhibit back in 2004 as First Lady, I know it was intended to be just a temporary exhibit, and it was so successful that it became a cornerstone of the museum. So congratulations on that. I think that speaks to the power of celebrating women and telling women's stories. And so it's been my honor to work with the museum to continue your legacy and to update that exhibit for future generations. So thank you so much for all of that.
Well, I'm super excited that you're updating it. It wasn't really intended to be temporary. We wanted it to kind of take over the museum in many ways. And so everybody said to me, look, just come in, start small, and we'll slowly work our way up to taking over a floor or doing more. And I wanted to start it, Jen, because there was no focus on women in the entire California History Museum. When I became First Lady and I walked through the museum, when I walked through the Capitol, I kept looking around and I said, well, where are the women? Where are the pictures of the First Ladies? I walked through the History Museum and I said, where are the women in the History Museum? And everybody kind of looked around and went, well, and so I was like, okay, well, you know, we got to get the women up immediately. So that was the goal, really, was to get women in the Capitol. So we put up the exhibit of all the First Ladies with the line that said, we served two, or I think it says they served two, to acknowledge that the role of First Partner or First Lady is a formidable one. It's a one of service. It has weight, it can have impact. And then to go into the museum where so many kids come through to learn the history of our great state, I really wanted them to understand that women were an integral part of that history, a living, breathing part of that history. So they were instrumental in the creation and in the formation and integral in the present. And that's why it's so great that you're updating it, because there are women that weren't in that initial exhibit that deserve to be in there now, and probably every year. You could update it probably by the month.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you've achieved your goals because it is remarkable. And so I want to go a little bit further into, because we both come from different backgrounds. You have 4 brothers and grew up in a political family, and I lived overseas.
Grew up in a what family?
A political family.
Oh, I think you had a playful family. I was like, what? A political family, yes. Okay, all right.
Playful too. The boys were playful, but and I grew up and with 4 sisters and having worked overseas, and so we came at this from different places. Did something about your childhood or your experience with brothers, or even your mother as a role model, inspire your initial thinking on this museum?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as you said, I was an only girl. I was raised by a remarkable woman who was ahead of her time in every way, who grew up in a man's world, who was tough, who was competitive, I think was frustrated that more doors weren't open to her. So when she was raising me, she was always pushing me out to get involved in the tackle football, to get involved in hardball, baseball, to do everything that my brothers were doing. I went into journalism, which at the time was all male dominated and very competitive. And so my mother was always saying to me, you know, women, people don't know about women's contributions. They don't understand what women go through. And she was approaching it also on behalf of mothers who had children with intellectual disabilities. So I knew how hard it was to grow up with all boys. I knew how hard it was to compete in a profession that was dominated by men. And so when I became First Lady, I also knew that there were millions and millions of women in California who didn't really have visible representation in our history museum. And I also knew that if you're not on the wall, if your picture isn't there, if you're not above the fold, as they say in journalism, if people can't see you, they can't really imagine themselves to be like you, or they can't even see what's possible. So I thought, well, you know, it's really important for women to be able to see other women, no matter where they came from, no matter what their background was. So for sure, that influenced everything I did as First Lady. It's influenced my entire life. It's influenced the way I've raised my daughters. It influenced the way I've raised my sons. It's influenced my present work. Everything about my life has been influenced by growing up with 4 boys, having to survive. So not only with 4 boys, but in an incredibly large, you know, political, competitive, tough family. So I always knew that I wanted to put a face to women who were survivors. And that's why I invoked Minerva all the time when I was First Lady, because what I loved about Minerva was that she was both a warrior and a goddess of compassion and wisdom and poetry and the arts. And the women that I've admired and the woman that I want to be is a woman that encompasses all of those, that knows when to put the helmet on and knows when to take it off, and can be both a source of strength and a warrior, and can be soft and feminine and compassionate and nurturing, and also someone that owns their moment.
So today's August 18th. It's the centennial anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, when Tennessee became the 36th state to ratify women having the right to vote. So 100 years later, here we are. And it feels like we've made a lot of progress towards equality for women, and yet we still have so far to go. What would you say is the most important fight cause that we need to champion for women right now, in order to ensure that we have true equity by the time we celebrate the next 100 years of women's progress?
Well, I think there's two parts to that, right? There's, I think family leave is a huge part of women feeling like they're on a level playing field. But I also think it's about how women are raised. It's about the parenting of women. Women feel they're on an equal playing field when they're raised to believe they're on an equal playing field. I always quote my parents. My dad used to always say to me, you know, every room you walk into, you're the smartest person, and that room is lucky that you walked into it. And my mother was like, there is no playing field that you're not in. There is no table you don't deserve to sit at. You're as smart as any man, and just go out there and do whatever you want to do. So that gives you, I think, a certain, you know, like, I deserve to be in the room. I deserve to sit at the table. And rarely was there a table that I was invited to. I just walked in, pulled up a chair, and sat down. And I remember people kind of, even when I became First Lady, I would walk into like the cabinet room, pull up a chair, and everybody kind of look around, and I would just be like, okay, you know, and, you know, kind of, I think I have something to offer. So I don't think that's arrogance or ego. It's just a confidence, I think, that parents can help instill in children, which brings me back to, you know, parenting is so important. It's one of the, I think, if not the most important role in our society. And it's so often dismissed, or women are made to feel that they need to have something else to do because the parenting is not enough when they go out, not enough when they're out talking. And one of the things that I remember when I was First Lady, people would come up to me and say, a lot of women, you know, you should do this and you should do that. And I'd say, well, what about you? Why don't you do that? And they would say to me, well, I'm just a mom. And I said, don't ever say just a mom. You know, you have the power to create another human being that will change the world. That's the ultimate gift, right? And so you can instill confidence, you can turn a light on, you can steer a child in the direction of their future, you can steer a child in the direction of changing the world and changing their own life. So I think there is a political answer to that, there's a cultural answer to that, but ultimately women will feel equal, and it will when they feel equal. And when they feel equal, they will get rid of any rule or any law that stops them from being anything but.
I love it. That is such a beautiful way to end. I think that's so inspiring, and you continue to inspire. Thank you for creating this incredible exhibit and giving me the opportunity to rebirth it. You inspire me. You've been a role model to me. I think you've inspired everyone in the audience, and we just treasure you, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you for, you've always been so gracious to me and generous to me. And I think that that's something that women can bring to other women. The gift of nurture, the gift of generosity, the gift of saying to somebody, I see you, I understand you, I value you, and I appreciate you. And that breeds incredible confidence. That makes people feel, wow. So I see you, I value you, I understand you, I believe, and I think you're doing a great job. So God bless you, and thank you for having me, and thank you for birthing this even bigger and more permanent or whatever you're doing with it.
So exciting. Yay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Love you. Thank you again.
Love you too. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you so much, Maria, for that inspiring conversation and for your incredible vision in inspiring this exhibit. So, who's ready to take a peek? Let's get started. So, this part of the exhibit is all about California's history and our drive for equality, starting with our trailblazers. Strong women shaped the place we call California long before it became a state. For thousands of years, Native American women used the land's rich diversity of resources to sustain their communities. Most of their stories are lost in this history. Yet we know that some resisted the brutality of European conquest. Spanish and Mexican rule brought Hispanic newcomers, with men greatly outnumbering women. The gold rush lured immigrants from all over the world. Most were men hoping to get rich and return home. But the women of California, whether native-born, brought here in slavery, or drawn here by the promise of new lives, needed grit, talent, and ingenuity to succeed in this place of both opportunity and danger. And everything is both in English and Spanish. And this is really important to me as a history buff, because we didn't learn about these women in our US history courses or our California history books. Toy Perina is one of my favorites. One night in 1785, a small group of Tongva Indians armed with bows and arrows approached San Gabriel Mission. One of them was Toy Perina, a young medicine woman. They were angry that the missionaries had banned traditional dances, and it was just the latest of many assaults on their culture and acts of violence against them. She was remarkable. And then we have Maria Amparo Ruiz de Burton, who came of age in a prominent family in Baja California at the end of the Mexican-American War, and came here and was quite remarkable with her writing, and wrote very thoughtfully about a Mexican-American girl's life and a critique of Anglo culture. You have Biddy Mason, who, by the way, became the wealthiest Black woman in Los Angeles and one of its most noted philanthropists. And her story is incredible. She trekked cross-country behind her master's wagons, carrying the youngest of her 3 daughters on her back. She herded cattle, she prepared meals, and she was the midwife to all of the free and enslaved women on her journey. And she went from there to becoming a landowner. She even has a property deed here. It's a reproduction of her property deed, which is her homestead. And she was very clear that after purchasing it for $250, she told her children, no matter what, this was to remain their homestead. They were always to retain it. Charlie Parkhurst, One-Eyed Charlie, awesome story. Charlie ran away from a Massachusetts orphanage at the age of 12 wearing boys' clothing, became a skilled horse person, and ended up driving stagecoaches of 6 horses at a time between gold mining outposts in San Francisco, often driving 60 miles a day through flash floods when bears were attacking and bandits were attacking. And her One-Eyed Charlie, her patch from being kicked by a horse, did not slow her down. But Charlie really embodies someone who really embraced a different gender identity, and this is so refreshing. And again, we don't learn about all these incredible women in our history books, so let's go look at some more. So now we get to meet all of the incredible women in the early 1900s who really campaigned hard for the right to vote. Las mujeres de California tuvieron que luchar muy duro para tener derecho a votar. And it's true. They founded clubs across the state and championed issues of public goods, such as saving the redwoods and establishing kindergartens. Shut out of organizations run by white women, women of color actually formed their own clubs and advocated social and legal reforms. They used the courts to fight segregation on streetcars and in schools. And in 1911, 8 years before the national suffrage movement culminated in the 19th Amendment, California became the 6th state to grant women the right to vote. Not all women, unfortunately. Native Americans and Chinese immigrants were excluded, signaling the long road to equality ahead. But here are some of my favorite women. You have Delilah Beasley, who was a pioneering historian and journalist. She wrote for the Oakland Tribune. She was born in Cincinnati shortly after the Civil War and began her journalism career when she was 12. She ended up being a real crusader for ending racist language in newspapers. And we still have a lot of work to do in that arena, but she was remarkable. And then you have Tien Fu Wu, who her father had sold her to pay his gambling debts in China. And she turned her life around and ended up helping other women escape enslavement and hard labor. She convinced brothel doorkeepers to let the missionaries inside, communicated with the victims, and translated for the women in court. I mean, another incredibly brave soul. Maud Younger was actually born into a prosperous San Francisco family, but she identified with working class women. I just admire her so much. She was dubbed the millionaire waitress in that she founded San Francisco's first union for servers. She helped establish the San Francisco Wage Earners Suffrage League to ensure that suffragists did not overlook working women's concerns. Her leadership actually helped win the 8-hour workday for women. I mean, we have so much to be thankful to her for. And then there's Caroline Severance. She was an abolitionist and a suffragist. She was a leader in the clubs movement, encouraging women's political awareness and helping launch many women into public life. In fact, we actually have a reproduction of a 1911 women's suffrage leaflet. She was all across the state, inspiring women of all walks of life, really focused on improving the lives of homeless children and establishing the state's first juvenile court system. So again, a remarkable woman. And then Mary Ellen Pleasant, she was by many accounts born into slavery in the early 19th century, became an abolitionist, activist, and a millionaire. These women, they're all millionaires. What's going on here? No, but after arriving in the gold rush in San Francisco, she became a cook for the elite and then invested her earnings in boarding houses and laundries, dairies, and mines. She listed herself in 1890 as a capitalist, just a really interesting woman. But the Black community knew her as their champion. And almost a century before the Montgomery bus boycotts in Alabama, she successfully sued to desegregate San Francisco streetcars. So I don't know, we stand on these women's shoulders, and I just can't wait for you all to come learn more about them. We're gonna head to the 60s and 70s, so follow me. El movimiento por los derechos de la mujer de 10.060 surgió de las experiencias de las 2 décadas previas. So we know that the women's rights movement of the 60s emerged from the experience of the previous 2 decades. Clearly, as a result of World War II, there was a shortage of male workers, opening up opportunities for women in California's shipyards and aircraft plants. Unfortunately, racial discrimination typically kept women of color in lower wage jobs, and once the war was over, most female welders and riveters were shunted back into low paying women's jobs. So from the start, the women's rights movement really pursued multiple goals: workers' rights, sexual liberation, an end to the double standard in divorce and child custody, reproductive justice, and access to education. So an incredible array of leaders emerged to inspire future generations out of this period. I really want to take my hat off to Angela Davis, who's inspired so many in the Black Lives Matter movement. She's never shied away from controversy and really is a leader in the prison abolition movement, arguing that mass incarceration worsens society's problems. Tilly Hardwick successfully fought to make the federal government keep its promises to her Native American community. Truly a strong, brave woman. Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon, I have a very soft spot for them. They met in Seattle, fell in love, and moved to San Francisco, beginning a life of LGBTQ activism. My husband actually married them in a ceremony back in 2004 when Gavin Newsom was the mayor, allowing same-sex couples to marry. And you know, they were co-founders of the nation's first lesbian social and political organization and helped found the nation's first gay political club. I mean, they were just remarkable. And then we have Dolores Madrigal. She's like my shiro. I was so determined that she be in our exhibit. In 1973, Los Angeles factory worker Dolores Madrigal went to the county hospital to deliver her baby. This gets me every time. She didn't know until weeks later that she would never have another child. She had been sterilized, a procedure that was irreversible. Now, Madrigal and 9 other mothers filed a lawsuit claiming that the hospital systematically sterilized Spanish-speaking women without their consent or against their will. Madrigal and the other women overcame fear and shame, some having had kept the procedure secret from their families to come forward. And so while the judge ruled on behalf of the hospital, saying the case was the result of miscommunications between doctors and patients, her case led to bilingual counseling and other reforms and has really inspired so many women to speak up and speak out from her community. And then we have Judy Chicago, who, as an artist, I was always intrigued by. I mean, Judy was an educator, an artist, and author who examined the lives and feelings of women for more than 5 decades. You probably know her for The Dinner Party and its multimedia installation that was a collaboration of hundreds of volunteers. But she's just remarkable and really changed the traditional teacher-student relationship to one of collaboration. These women are, again, we stand on their shoulders. I can't wait for you to get to know them. Let's go visit the women in the 90s. And then we come to the 90s, where women were redefining feminism, and they all had different experiences. In 93, California became the first state to elect 2 women senators, Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer. We have Laura Sobrino, an amazing Latina woman who basically succeeded in the male-dominated world of traditional Mexican mariachi. Kimberly Crenshaw, a friend, an incredible advocate, coined the phrase intersectionality. We are so indebted to her for her work. Billie Jean King. I forgot Laura Aguilar, was a pioneer of Chicana photography. I can't wait for you to check all of these incredible women out. And then we come to the online generation. These incredible advocates and activists have really transformed the cultural conversation. You have Shonda Rhimes, the prolific creative force in the entertainment industry. Susan Fowler, with her one blog post that basically tore apart all the sexual harassment, not just at Uber, but in Silicon Valley, and exposed it for what it really was. Issa Noyola, an incredible transgender activist who was a leader in the national LGBTQ movement. We have Alicia Garza and Patrice Khan Colors, partners in founding Black Lives Matter. I just am in awe of their fortitude and strength, and look where we are today. It's really, really exciting to see what they've birthed. And Yara Shahidi, so young, a social activist while still in high school and using her fame for good. Remarkable women. Again, they'll keep fighting on, and we have to be grateful to them for really giving voice to the voiceless and to so many. So up here, you can see a not equal yet sign, and that's because while enormous progress has been made since the passing of the 19th Amendment 100 years ago, there is still so much more work to be done to create a truly equitable future. In Congress, while we finally reached more than 100 women serving in 2019, women still make up less than 25% of the total. On the issue of equal pay, women still are far from parity. And on our television screens, women are only 34% of speaking characters. How is this representative when women are 51% of the population and give birth to 100% of the population? So this is where you come in. We need you to take up the mantle and keep the charge for equality going. So let's check out the next part and find your inspiration. And we'll get to hear from 2 special guests as well. Come on. So we're in the Find Your Inspiration section. Who do you want to be first like? Do you want to be first like Nancy Pelosi, the first female Speaker of the House? Or what about Janet Yellen, the first female chair of the Federal Reserve Bank. Or we have Sally Ride, the first woman in space. Be the first. Who are you going to lead like? Maybe you're going to lead like Tani Cantil Sacauye. She was the first Filipino American and the second woman to serve as Chief Justice of California. Perhaps you want to innovate like Eileen Lee. Eileen Lee founded Cowboy Ventures, a venture capital firm, and she's working so hard to ensure more women are in the top in California technology companies. Or do you want to win like Bianca Valenti, Serena and Venus Williams, or Alex Morgan and Megan Rapinoe? We have a very special guest today, and I can't wait for you to hear more from Megan Rapinoe, our very own Californian. Let's take a listen.
My name is Aoife. And I'm Zach. And we love soccer. So we're inspired by Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan. Megan and Alex are professional soccer players who led the USA to victory in the Olympics and the Women's World Cup. They grew up a few years apart in different parts of California, but they came together as co-captains of Team USA. Megan is a crafty player who is almost as famous for her style as her style of play. And when she scores a goal, you know it. This pose is called the Rapinoe. Megan won the Golden Boot and the Golden Ball awards at the 2019 Women's World Cup in France. And she was named Player of the Year. Alex is known for her late-game heroics. In the 2012 Olympic semifinals against Canada, she scored the winning goal with just 30 seconds left in the game. In the 2019 World Cup opener against Thailand, she tied a world record by scoring 5 goals.
Alex Morgan, it's her night.
And she ended the tournament with the silver boot. Both Megan and Alex fight just as hard off the field as on the field.
Step outside yourself. Be more, be better, be bigger than you've ever been before.
They've sued the U.S. Soccer Federation for sex discrimination. They're demanding that women soccer players be paid just as well as the men. And that's why we're inspired by Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan. I don't know.
Hi, Megan. This is such a treat. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this exhibit.
Oh, of course. This is an honor for me from my home state, so I couldn't be happier to be joining you.
So we're sitting here in the California Museum's Women Inspire exhibit, where kids all across the state can learn about the stories of powerful women. And one of my favorite notions is, if you can see it, you can be it. What would it have meant to you to be able to see this kind of exhibit as a young girl? And what does it mean to you now to be featured in it?
Oh gosh, it's hard to put even into words what it would have meant. I had a few female role models. I knew of Ellen, so I knew there was at least one gay person out there. But it's hard to even know because we just had so few, and I just saw so many of the same things over and over. But as I've kind of gotten a little bit more mature, we'll say, in my career and in my age, and to see the impact that I've had and my teammates have had, and what we've been able to do to inspire off the field, I just can't even imagine. I mean, people think I'm wild now. I'd probably be even further out if I had some role models like myself. But I think it's just what you said. If you can see it, you know what is possible. And I think it's incredible when we do have people that break through and are incredibly inspiring and who, become things that they never knew possible. But that's an exceptional case to have that. And so for the average kid, for the average person, in their everyday setting, to see, that you can be a doctor, you can be an athlete, you can be whatever it is that you want to be in any field, I just think opens up people's minds and heart in a completely different way and allows kids creativity and their inspiration to really shine through.
I love that. So your section is Win Like Megan Rapinoe. But what I love about you is that it's always been about more than winning on the field. It's about making a difference. What does it mean to win like Megan Rapinoe?
Oh, what does it mean to win like me? I do think, first and foremost, I mean, I love playing soccer. I love sports. I love the competitive nature of it. Of course, if you're going to play, you should try to play to win. But I feel so lucky to have represented the national team, represented the country for so long. And that means so much more. I understand we go out there, we're competitive, we're athletes, we try to win everything. But the amount that we've been able to inspire off the field means so much more to me than what we've done on the field. I would give all of that up for, you know, the little gay kids that we've touched, or, you know, having Crystal Dunn playing a World Cup and the little Black kids that she's touched, the little Black girls that she's touched, and just inspired them in so many different ways. So I feel like for me, my sort of whole philosophy is I think everyone has the responsibility to try to make the world a better place in whatever way that they can. For me, that, you know, has predominantly been this sort of soccer vehicle that then I get access to the media, or access to this bigger media platform. And then what are we doing with it? Like, what's the point of life? Like, if I just, you know, sort of end my life with all these championships and nothing else, it's kind of like, okay, that's cool. But I feel like there's so much more work to be done. And I've seen firsthand just how impactful and how amazing, if you couple the two, what kind of work can be done, and how many lives that you can really change.
I love that. And it's really exciting to see how you're catapulting this success into these other avenues. And so it'll be fun to continue to watch you over the years, because I know you're going to continue to have a huge impact on all of our lives. So yay on that. All right, final question. So it's the 100th anniversary of the passing of the 19th Amendment. Why does this anniversary matter? And what is the most important message you can give to women and girls across the state and country, because I like to say as California goes, so can go the country, about what we must champion to ensure true equality in the next 100 years?
I think that this anniversary really should be an opportunity for us to reflect back on what that 19th Amendment really was and what it did. I think, as we all know, or sort of as the popular narrative goes, it gave women the right to vote, right? But it's like, did it give all women the right to vote? As we know, you know, Black people and women of color have had a much different road than us white women have. And so I feel that this is an opportunity, yes, to celebrate that landmark amendment, but also to look back and say, where did we fall short? What did we miss? How has that affected us up until this point? And what lessons can we take with us for the next generation, for the next, 100 years, as we continue to fight voter suppression, as we continue to see, the attack on the USPS for the purpose of trying to slow down mail getting to people on the mail-in ballots. I think that while we can celebrate, there's areas where we, frankly, just fell short. And so how can we learn from that? So any initiatives or laws or legislature, anything that we're doing from there forward, we can make it a more equal opportunity for everyone. And I think what we've seen is that, even with women getting the right to vote, the foundation of that was a little bit cracked from the beginning. And so over time, as you put more on top of that, those cracks start to widen. So how do we work to mitigate that going forward? And I think for girls and for little girls, now growing up in the state of California, and as you say, as California goes the nation, just to never really just take the upfront answer. Just to go for what you believe in. I think that we all kind of have that gut feeling and that sort of drive in our heart, and just to go after what you believe in, to fight for everyone, fight for the most marginalized, the most underprivileged. That's where we should be starting. And I think if we start there, and if we really focus on the most marginalized in our society, it really does lift everyone else up. And so, for little girls, like, you have the power, you are enough, you are smart enough, you are, great leaders, you are the future of not only the state of California, but the country. And I can't wait to see what the next 100 years, I probably won't live for 100 more years, but maybe like 60 or 70 more. I can't wait to see what this next generation of little girls will do.
Oh, it's awesome. I couldn't agree more. And it really is a huge opportunity for us to really come together as a community and come together as a larger collective to really, to your point, champion the most marginalized voices and rights and ensure that we can fulfill that American dream for everyone once and for all. So this was awesome. Thank you, Megan. You're just such an inspiration to so many. You deserve your place right here in the museum, and will continue to inspire. And as I said earlier, I can't wait to continue to watch what you do. Keep up being the incredible champion that you are, and the rest of us are going to want to keep winning just like you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It really does mean the world coming from my home state where all my family still lives. So thank you.
Yay. All right, thanks. That was pretty cool. I kind of want to win like Megan Rapinoe, but maybe you want to discover like Mary Claire King. Mary Claire King is actually known for identifying a gene linked to many breast cancers. And her discovery revolutionized breast cancer treatment, allowing patients to choose therapies based on whether or not they have the gene. She also uncovered genetic links to deafness and schizophrenia. Thank you, Mary Claire. Or maybe you want to create like Isabel Allende or Hung Lu. Hung Lu is one of the most prominent Chinese artists in America. She made this artwork especially for this exhibit called California Love Story. It was inspired by a Dorothea Lange photograph of destitute Dust Bowl migrants on the road to California. And then there's Ray Eames. Those who admire mid-century modern design prize Eames chairs and other furniture. Yet Ray Eames is largely unknown in the US and in her hometown of Sacramento. And if people recognize the name at all, they often assume that she was Charles Eames' brother rather than his wife, who was his equal partner in all of their work. Ray made these miniatures in the 40s, likely as prototypes for a line of children's furniture. She later gave them to her niece, who thankfully donated them for this exhibit. And finally, do you want to challenge like Dolores Huerta? We are so lucky to have Dolores Huerta with us today. So let's learn a little bit more about her.
I'm Layla, and I believe in social justice, so I'm inspired by Dolores Huerta. Dolores is a labor organizer who helped form the United Farm Workers Union. She grew up in Stockton, where her mother owned a restaurant and a hotel that catered to migrant workers. Dolores saw that these farm workers had a hard life because they were underpaid and they worked under terrible conditions in the fields. After college, she became an elementary school teacher, and she saw that some of her students came to school hungry because their families were so poor. So she decided to quit her job teaching and became a full-time labor organizer. In 1962, she met a man named Cesar Chavez. Together, they formed the United Farm Workers Union to fight for better pay, shorter workdays, and clean and safe places to eat and sleep for farm workers.
The social and the economic revolution of the farm workers is well underway, and it will not be stopped until we receive equality.
In 1965, Dolores led a national boycott. She asked people to stop buying grapes until the landowners agreed to a fair contract with the workers who picked the fruit. The boycott ended in victory and helped improve conditions for migrant workers, especially in California.
The workers are on the rise. There will be strikes all over the state and throughout the country.
Dolores has never stopped fighting for the things she believes in. And that's why I'm inspired by Dolores Huerta.
Thank you so much for partaking in the California Women exhibit, Women Inspire exhibit. That's where we are. That's who you are. You are someone who inspires. And I'm just so grateful to be able to have this conversation with you. Because what we're doing here is really celebrating women's contributions and telling their stories. And for far too long, your contributions to the labor movement were not as visible. Cesar Chavez's. You are the magic, in some ways, the number two, right behind the scenes, but as important. Why is it important to ensure we recognize women's contributions? And what does it mean to you to be a part of this exhibit today, the rebirth of the Women Inspire exhibit?
Well, I know we as women are often very reluctant to take credit for what we do. We think that we might be bragging or we're being conceited. But I think it's important that for other women, and especially for our young women, especially for our girls, because when they see that women are powerful, that women can accomplish great things, that inspires them. And it gives them something that they want to achieve themselves. So for those reasons, although I think it's, as I said before, many women are very embarrassed and you have to nudge them, no, take credit for what you did. And they always want to take a step back, but it's extremely important.
Mm. Was it hard for you to come forward initially and claim your power and say, this is what I've done and this is who I am?
Actually, it really was. And a lot of times when we do that, we get pushback, from other people, especially the guys, they don't appreciate oftentimes that women need to step out. But we know, especially now when we're celebrating women's suffrage, and we think of all of the suffering that women did to be able to just get us the right to vote. And so I think we have to do it in their name, and we have to celebrate women's accomplishments.
Right, thank you. So what does it mean to challenge like Dolores Huerta? Your area is the challenge like. Desafía como. Dolores Huerta. What does that mean?
Well, it means that it means that we have to challenge and really fight for the things that women need right now. We know that we need universal child care and early childhood education so that all women can be freed up, and men too, in order to participate in civic life. It means that we have to fight for the Equal Rights Amendment for women, because now with Virginia being the 38th state to ratify that, we've got to make sure that we move the dates so that we can actually be able to make that happen, so that it can be in the convention at the United Nations that yes, we as women are equal. It's called the Equal Rights Amendment. We have to keep fighting. And I think this is important in our educational system, that we start teaching little boys when they're in pre-K, hey, you know what, women are equal. We're fighting for ethnic studies and labor studies, but let's put gender studies also, so that young men can really understand that they have to respect and they have to honor women as human beings, but also in the things that they can and will accomplish.
That's great. So last question, and one of my favorite quotes of yours is that every moment is an organizing opportunity, and every person is a potential activist, and every minute a chance to change the world. There is certainly a lot of activism going on right now, and it feels like many folks have been activated to change the world for good. What more can each of us do, and what is your hope for our future?
Well, I think we have to continue organizing and educating other women, especially, when it comes to women's reproductive rights. And we know that that's a political football. And we have to say, you know what, regardless of how you feel about women's reproductive rights, you should not let your political decisions be tainted by that or be decided by that. We have to think of women, that we need women in our political life. And I love to quote Coretta Scott King, who says that we will never have peace in the world until women have power. And I like to use the word feminists, until feminists have power. And so we have to keep talking to other women and organizing both men and women to understand that we as women, that, we have equal rights and we have equal power. And yes, we need to have more women in our state legislatures and in government. Because we are more than half of the population, and we should also be able to be represented in half of every decision-making body.
That's right. That is right. Oh my goodness. Well, you are a treasure. California is lucky to have you. The world is lucky to have you. Thank you for your incredible leadership. Thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for being such a champion for so many. And I am so excited to keep seeing what you do and all that you have impacted and all of those that you have impacted. You've really lit a fire and awakened us all to how critical it is to organize and be activated and champion equal rights. So thank you so much, Dolores Huerta.
Well, thank you for honoring me. Thank you for honoring me with this interview. And
Yes.
I know we'll keep working together to make sure that we as women, we will win the ERA and to pass that covenant so that we can say, yes, we are equal.
Yes, sí se puede. Gracias por todo.
Gracias.
Igual. Okay, thank you. Mwah.
Wow, Dolores, you are such an inspiration. So now we've come to the end of the Women Inspire Tour, but this is where each of you gets to be a part of the exhibit. Please visit californiamuseum.org and fill out who actually inspires you. We'll add your responses to the wall, and before you know it, the exhibit will be open for you to visit in person. So that's where Women Inspire ends, but I still have one more surprise for you. Let's go check it out. Come on. So behind me, you can see the setup for an incredible new exhibit, Fight for the Right, dedicated to the history of the incredible suffrage movement and its legacy today. Today, August 18th, is the 100-year anniversary of when Tennessee ratified the 19th Amendment, making them the 36th state to do so, and clearing the path for full ratification, which happened 1 week later on August 26 in Washington, D.C. Now, through my work on the National Women's Suffrage Centennial Commission, I've had the privilege of learning in vivid detail so much more about the suffrage movement than I had known previously. And I'm so excited to share this exhibit with all of you. From the suffragists demanding equal pay for equal work, legal protections against domestic violence, increased political representation, and leading the first ever White House protest, I am continually moved by the common threads that bind the early suffragists to our current women's movement. And with 68 million women voting in elections today and over 100 women representing us in Congress, it is clear we stand on their shoulders. Yet it is also clear that just as we celebrate these women with renewed appreciation, we must also look with renewed dedication to learn from their mistakes in not fighting enough for the rights of women of color. Because while white women may have secured their right to vote in 1920, we know the full enfranchisement for all women did not take place until many, many years later. So today, our women's movement has the opportunity to move us forward even further. We have the opportunity to remember that our fates, the fates of white women, Black women, Latinx women, Native women, Asian women, LGBTQ women, all women are intertwined. That if you are suffering, then I am suffering. That none of us are free until all of us are free. It's up to us to show the world that when we work together and advocate for equality together, we are so much more powerful than when we stand alone. So on the 100th anniversary of the suffrage movement, it cannot be a greater privilege to stand before all of you as the first partner of California, to honor the brave suffragists on whose shoulders we stand, to heed their lessons, to fight for one another, to lift each other up, and to show the world what is possible when we do. Thank you all for joining me on this journey tonight. Thank you to former First Lady Maria Shriver. Thank you to Megan Rapinoe and Dolores Huerta. And thank you to the California Museum for pulling together these truly extraordinary exhibits, honoring the women who make California the great state that it is and inspiring our collective future. Please visit californiamuseum.org, check out these exhibits in more detail and all of the amazing resources the museum has to offer. And we can't wait to have you visit in person once it is safe to do so. So onwards to the next 100 years of women's equality. Thanks for being with us. Good night, everyone.